Hello and welcome back, and we are joined by two new faces. So welcome in Midnight, welcome in Nymera, and we have another game coming up. As expected, that's why we are back. Burning Court versus Crest Gaming Act, and I want to get your take. Pre-split expectations were not necessarily the best for either of these teams. So I'll kick it off with you, Nymera. Kind of how are you seeing this game come forward? A lot of changes have happened.
Hang on. I take issue with something. New face? I'm a new face around here, man. I've been kicked.
for today.
I've been kicked down. Okay, for today, I've been kicked down the authority ladder. Okay, pre-split expectations. Get back onto this. So last split was not pretty for either of these teams. Significantly worse for Burning Core than it was for CGA. But I look at both of these rosters and I see hopefully marked upgrades for both of these teams, at least in the stability of them. These two had the very lowest of lows, probably out of all the teams in the LJL coming up to this point. So this is actually quite an important game for both of these teams to show that they're that one step above where they were last split.
Yeah, for you, Midnight, are you expecting it to be pretty close? Are you expecting either of these teams to really kind of wipe the floor with the other?
Issue with coming into this match is I can only see Burning Corpse for what I remember them last year, which is the team, yes, I'm never letting that go, the team that goes 1-13 last split. And the one win they got was against CGA in the first week. So they went pretty much most of the summer split winless, and now they have to go up against the team that, was the one win they were able to get early on. So my gut instinct is that, God, I hope the changes to Burning Core's roster is enough to at least get them to the point where they just don't have 3 lanes, which are basically all on fire at the same time. Because that felt like a lot of the problem. There's laning phase, it's going well, and suddenly everything's on fire, and there's nothing that they can do to put it out.
Yeah, and then, as you said, one win last split. At least they've equalized that already, so they're off to a good start. It's better times for them. And obviously, history does sometimes repeat itself, so it is something to watch out for. And talking about watching out for, before we kind of going into this, we're talking about top lane. It seems to be a little bit of a focus that needs to be addressed.
So I think for me, the star player on Burning Core has always been Rayfarky. I remember back to when I first started casting the LJL back in 2020. Rayfarky was probably the only top laner that would really make Ebby sweat. Maybe some odd games from Cog outside of that, but he's continued to be a real exemplar of the fighter top laner. He loves playing Jace, loves playing a lot of his higher carry champions. Fell away from that a little bit last year. I would love for this split and this whole season to be a bit of a redemption arc for this top lane player. He's up against Nap, one of the other older players in the scene. Nap was less explosive in the laning phase, but his team fight has been immaculate when he's been on form. So for me, my eyes have to be drawn towards that top side.
Yeah, and with obviously the talk about top lane, we also kind of have to talk about the champions that have been played a lot recently as well. Like we saw Tryndamere earlier today, we've seen the return of the Gnar. But do you think we maybe see some more Gwen? It's been pretty strong around a lot of other regions.
Do you want to take this, Midnight, or you feeling up to it? Pretty much.
Yeah. I'd love to see
this is main champion. It is, yeah.
Warm pillow that you can retreat behind and cuddle when everything's going wrong, but I want to see these two out of blood from the
It's like a comfort blanket. Is that what we're going for?
Well, talking about kind of comfort blanket, obviously it's comfortable if you win early game. Early game is a bit of a vibe. We've seen Zeri in the last game just absolutely just remove the whole rift. It's crazy. What are your expectations of the early game from these two teams?
So this is something which I think this is something which actually Midnight brought up when we were just kind of sat in our preparation call, we're chatting through these games, and the first thing that I think of actually when normally about CJ is that they just can't play early lane. Last year they couldn't anyway, when they were playing around Alchemy in the bot lane alongside Milan, who is a bit of a newer ADC, when they had this changing revolving door of mid laners which they were subbing in and out. Top lane, of course, Nap, that's probably the worst part of his game. CJ really struggled to give Cassin anything to play with in the early game. Burning Core, similarly, while their top lane's very good, their mid and bot lane would just fall into shambles fairly early on into the game. This does mean that because we've got weakness versus weakness, there's a chance that that evens out, and both these teams see an option there. But either way, I'd like to see both of these teams stepping up in the next stage of their teams, evolving to the next level.
And then for you, Midnight, I guess a similar question regarding the early game. Obviously, going to be pretty important. Do you have any kind of like vibes of, okay, I'm expecting this team to come out really strong, or are you just kind of like, let's see what Pick and Ban brings and go from there?
Is this a good point to bring up Burning Core's bot lane? Am I allowed to bring that up?
Because
I feel
have to
like
pull the trigger at some point.
Yeah, we have to pull the trigger at some point. The Burning Core bot lane struggled last split. There's no two ways about it there. I don't recall many times they won lane, if at all. And what I would just love is for them to go even. I'm not asking them to, lock in like the Zeri and have to like do really well in the laning phase. I'm not asking them for any, or like a Vayne or something like that.
Talking about lock-in, I will have to cut you off really brief there. We are going to go into Pick and Ban, so you guys can talk away even more as we do go into Pick and Ban's for Game 3.
Oh, where's J-Real gone? I miss that guy. I miss him a lot. We haven't missed too many of the bans, though.
Oh, thank God she's banned. Okay, Zeri is off the table. I mean, she's strong. She is ridiculously strong. So,
Very much so.
I do like that Burning Core have to take that away, because otherwise, Hybrid's taking that first rotation, no questions asked, and you can't let that get through.
Speaking of first rotations, I was wondering if this is going to be the Thresh or the Aphelios. So it is going to be the Aphelios. Actually, so as much as we dump on Yuhi a fair amount, because he has struggled a lot in the bot lane over time, his Aphelios was his best champion, and he looks more stable on that champion than anything else. I think CJ very heads up, just saying, yeah, take the Aphelios, that's more than fine. If you lock that inside alongside something like a Thresh, then you've got a very lane dominant bot side. Even against the Jinx, you're a little worried. This is becoming an LJL staple, though. Tryndamere has been cropping up all over the place.
Yeah, and I do quite like these locks in, honestly. Pick up the Jinx, she's extremely strong right now. Of course, you've got the Tryndamere. You've got some, I say the word some flexibility in that, because you could give it to Dice, right? You could just put it in...
Yeah, potentially.
The mid lane. So you could flex it around a little bit. And now it's asking Kaito... Because Kaito, if memory serves, was a aggressive Zoe play. He loved his Zoe. Is he going to be willing to lock that in, knowing that, hey, you could just have a Tryndamere who's just going to spin on top of your face the moment you lower your guard for a second?
That's the real question is comfort or comp. It does tend to be a bit of a compromise between both. And speaking of that, the Lee Sin for Cassin, it's not, if we're talking about comfort or comp, it's not necessarily what I would put him towards as his first champion. I loved his Olaf. I loved him seeing Gragas jungle and the like, but it's going to be that Lee Sin. It's going to be a Vex. Very strong mid-jungle 2v2 early on into the game. This is going to be a bit of a trial by fire for Dice. Have to see whether he's actually going to be banned out in that second phase, because Vex is already strong at the level 1, level 2 mark in mid lane. Aren't too many mid laners that really want to brawl with her.
Yeah, and the last one, Tom Kench actually picked up. I'm still a bit hesitant on people going so heavy into the Tom Kench. I just think that you can look for something like a Karma or a Lulu, a bit more these Enchanter styles. I'm quite a fan of when looking at hyper carry like the Jinx, or even the Nautilus, Leona, something along those lines would be quite fun as well.
You know what I like, though? I like the fact that every Burning Core member is currently taking Smite. I think that they're going to walk in level 1, immediately destroy red buff, and then that's game over, right? So
yes, because taking Smite top lane has never failed.
Yeah, we saw that the Bard mid with Smite, we saw the Poppy top with Smite. Have you heard of entire team going on safari and killing the wildlife? Tom Kench, going back to that pick, is it's not the same champion that we knew from when they was last support. This has been changed to top lane, away from top lane. It's actually quite aggressive in lane nowadays, but it's still not something I particularly want to play into the likes of the Aphelios. It feels like Aphelios just avoids if the Aphelios avoids that W, the Abyssal Dive, it gets very, very difficult to win a fight after that point, because you're a lot of HP and Aphelios just shreds through it.
Okay, thank God. I was getting really concerned seeing that Udyr, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, what does Udyr do? Udyr runs at the problem. What is Aphelios great at? Champions that run at Aphelios. So I really like to see the Karthus here. I'm assuming this is going to go into Flawless's hands, because I want to see Season 3 lane Karthus. but I'm not that ambitious.
I don't think Burning Core are going to be that ambitious either. We saw this, of course, from Cloud9. Actually, from myself casting over in the ERLs in the NLC, we've seen a couple of Karthus games. Karthus is very good if you survive early, get to farm into relevancy, and you're the sole AP threat on your team. I don't know if it's great into the Vex and the Lee Sin. It feels like Lee Sin can fight you early, can very much punish you. For me, this is now going to have to be a very early concerted effort from Burning Core to support their Karthus through the first and second clears and make sure that Cassin doesn't just take Flawless's head off.
Yeah. And I do like how they've ended this as well. The Renekton is pretty solid when you go blind, and I much prefer it over the typical, LJL Nah, because Rayfarki has a bit of a history when it comes to taking champions to break your ankles. And I would give...
He's going to do it again. There we go.
A better chance in this matchup as Rayfarki's like, all right, I played this last year. I believe he played it against CGA, if memory serves me. So he's just like, all right, let's run it back. Let's do a repeat of history.
And Rayfarki has been, for the longest time, a very long-standing Darius main. He will take this into fighter matchups. He's bringing the Dunk Master out on the top side, looking to cross over that Renekton. And as much as you pick Renekton for early lane dominance, Darius one-ups that. This is going to be very much on Nap to stand strong in the early lane. I will say Nap on Renekton in the past has been very good in the early lane, as opposed to some of his other champions. And we highlighted this top lane matchup. Can't think of a better set of champions to showcase both of these players brawling it out.
Yeah, that's going to be... I'm really hoping for solo kills. I don't care who gets the solo kill. I just want a solo kill on the top side. That's really, really fun to see up there. But the one thing that does kind of worry me a little bit, Nightmare, is, again, I talked about Aphelios being great at champions that are running at him, and I'm not seeing the greatest amount of range coming in from Burning Core. You've got Karthus, which isn't bad, but then you've got Tryndamere, who has to spin his way at the problem. Darius, presumably taking Ghost in Rayfarki's hands, is going to run at the problem. A lot of it is running down Hybrid, and if Hybrid plays it correctly, I'm just a little concerned team fights may be a little bit difficult.
No, I completely agree. Protect Aphelios, Mr. President. If Hybrid is allowed to free fire with the correct weapons, it's a very hard race to win in terms of the damage output which these two teams are going to put out. So what that means is that, well, Burning Core cannot take even fights. You need to take it on the side of the fight. Try and pick someone off with the Tahm Kench going in, Darius popping Ghost, Tryndamere popping Ghost. Maybe you can win through side lanes as well. However, I look at that too, and I see a Lee Sin who's very happy to brawl and kick people away. I look at the Vex who can fly into that fight. I feel like CGA have answers to almost everything that Burning Core want to do. Burning Core do have the win lane, win game angle, though. That's where I'm trying to see if they'll pull things off. If they get ahead early, very dangerous comp. If not, seems pretty lights out.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll find out. We did talk about the importance of early game between these two teams, and I guess it's quite important for both sides that if you fall behind, well, things aren't exactly going to go according to plan. So let's see how these two are battling out here. The first time these two have met this year, and there it is, the Dunk Master Skin, as is expected from Rayfarki here.
It is, and it's also taking the Ghost. You can see the Summoners, and we can see ourselves the Runes as well. Nothing out of the ordinary there. I could have maybe seen a Glacial on the Nautilus, except it's going for the Aftershock. Particularly in something like the Tahm Kench, she's happy to tank the hook and turn around with a decent amount of damage. You don't do quite as much damage as you used to with the... because Tahm Kench's passive doesn't scale as much on his max HP anymore, which is where a lot of his damage came through. But going for that Aftershock going to give a little more survivability. Not sure that's going to help too much if you actually get stuck into the brawling solo laners, but in the 2v2, I can understand that logic. Outside of that, pretty much stock standard.
And Dice? What do you... Well, me hopes like Dice is going to do some cheesy like steal.
This is the thing. So this is a really big ward to put. So you want to get a ward on the Raptors, and it helps you see if the jungler is starting on red based on the direction that the jungler walks over that ward. If they come from bot to top, then you think, oh, they've gone red, they'll go into Raptors, they're going to Gromp. Because they don't see in there, they know Kassin's jungle path almost certainly. Lee Sin probably not going to be full clearing, and that helps the Karthus survive the early game.
Yeah. And, well, that's what you need to do, right? Burning Core, a lot of it is just we need to make sure that Flawless does not get killed by Cassin early. And how do you do that? Correct vision. And with Flawless starting on the bottom 100%. Half of the map here, it means he's going to rotate to the top half as Nemo gets a nice hook. And then, unless Cassin does some weird, like, topside invade, which he genuinely can't because Rayfaki is going to kill him if he makes that move. Flawless's first couple minutes are going to be nice and safe, and you talked about Karthus. If he's allowed to be the single AP threat, it's going to be brilliant. Is Kaito trying to cheese this? Oh no, he's doing the same. Never
It's the
mind.
same ward again. It's jungle tracking. So I really like this. Again, I mean, this is now a little dangerous, but I mean, Karthus does have very quick clear. It's going to quick camp steal away. Whenever Karthus gets to start stealing away minions, you're a little worried from the enemy team, and he does it without losing any camps himself. Good plays from Burning Court in the early game. I'm actually quite impressed with how they're managing to prop up this Karthus. But it's their comp. They need to do this, make no mistake, but at least they're doing the bare minimum.
Yeah, they're doing what they need to be doing, which is important. As a thing, and bot lane's just going to be a scrap fest down there. But now the question for me is, what does Kassan do? He's got nothing really to take. Like, he's taking his Krugs now, but like, what do you do in this situation? Because bot lane's not really in the position to gank unless you do, you know, a cheeky little lane gank or something like that. And I would be very surprised if DICE is going to, you know, get caught by a gank and killed. So, like, do you just reset and then kind of try and help out Nap? Like, what's the next step for the Lee Sin?
I don't know if you can gank a Darius though. It does have the Ghost as the combat summoner. You have also the Karthus who has taken all the camps on top side. They'll be respawning, can sit on the Krugs and kind of keep himself on that side of the map. I feel like you're going to get 1v2'd if you run into that Darius at this point in the game. Plus, it's not like DICE with the Ghost can't enter that fight as well. Much harder to impact these side lanes with teleport. Ghost actually helps you get to those side lanes a little better. So you're right, Kassan has very few options. I mean, at this point, you're basically looking to see if Karthus turns up in the wrong point and punish them. That's the one thing I can think of.
Yeah, you see, he's like, okay, can't do much. Like, you can't even try and cheese out an early dragon. Like, that's the one thing I think maybe Kassan could look for, but it doesn't really feel right now. Flawless is like, all right, sweet. I can go bot side. My Gromp's coming up soon. A lot of options for him down there, and I know you mentioned that coming topside could be dangerous. Rayfaki does have a tendency to murder a jungler if he decides to come up at the wrong time, but I think you need to start impacting this lanes. The longer that Flawless is just allowed to vibe in his jungle, the scarier this Burning Core lineup is. So I don't know.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Doing something.
I think maybe CGA just have to play it slow at this point, sadly, because you have to wait until hopefully Burning Core overcommit into you. I would seriously advise against fighting over the Herald, actually, as one of the other objectives in this early game. You look at these solo laners, very strong at the 8 to 10 minute mark when you've got that first ultimate up. As much as Renekton loves that point in the game too, I think you're outmatched. CGA, I think they just need to start trying to get that tracking a little more in order as to where Flawless is, as to where Fujimoto turns up on the map too. That's going to be a big step for me. How can CGA spot out these members and pick people off around the sides?
Yeah, well, right now they're not doing a whole lot. Kassan at least has had his Raptors not taken away from him this time. He's allowed to get his KFC run. But,
Yes.
but my concern is still what we were talking about earlier, right? This Lee Sin, I see Lee Sin in the same world that I see Jarvan, which is if you're not impacting the lanes in the first 5, 7, 10 minutes, you know, there are other champions that are better at sitting back and doing the whole farming fest. You know, my first gut instinct is Sejuani, Zac, stuff like that. So we need to see him. I want to use the word forcing something in one
For
of the
sure.
lanes.
I can kind of understand that logic.
A vibing Lee Sin, just, I don't know, it just does not. I don't think it's as good as, again, especially compare it to what it's dealing with Karthus, who is already getting online.
So, definitely agreed in terms of the late game impact. Karthus is going to have a lot more. I think that Lee Sin is much better at mid to late game than previous seasons, particularly when you with the itemization, with Gore Drinker and the like, really helping out a lot of his different damage and sustain options. He's actually very, very tanky with that. What I will say is that coming into the mid and late game with Lee Sin, your kick is going to be so huge. If you can kick out a Darius in the middle of the fight, if you can kick out the Tryndamere, which allows your Vex and your fellows to reset, put out more damage, I think this Lee Sin is very high value.
Yeah, but it needs to be executed correctly. That's the caveat, I suppose, on top of all of that. Which Kassan should be able to do, right? Like, Kassan's a pretty damn good jungler, so he should be able to pull that off. I'm just always a fan of Lee Sin having that, you know, that strong lane impact, right? Like, that's what I really like to see. But none of the lanes are really in the position where he's been allowed to. Like, even Rayfaki has now hit level 6, and I feel like if you're going to get, if we're gonna see blood, it needs to be from just Rayfaki, right? Your Darius is probably insanely strong. You've just hit level 6. You've got that execute ready to go. you could even look for something like a Rift Herald fight, right? Because with the Darius, surely that tells CGA that they're not allowed to contest for the first.
Well, that's
Rift
what
Herald
we
fight.
mentioned a little earlier, right? Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like, look, don't fight Rift Herald into a Tryndamere who's got their ult, the Karthus who's also power farming up a Storm, and then the Darius too. It just seems like Burning Core are more suited for that. Now, it's not a 100% done thing. Maybe there's the way that Burning Core approach that objective in the wrong way, and maybe you move your bot lane up first or something like that. Have to check for those support rotations. Doesn't look like either of these supports are looking well. Okay, at least Nemo is choosing not to do that. But yes, I think that's definitely something which Burning Core can look towards and CJ want to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for the CJ contesting that just because I like fighting. Like, it may not be the best decision. I agree. And Cassin, he is playing around Vision though. I don't think Ray Farkey knows.
He did just spot it. There were some pings. Ray Farkey just pinged it. He's got to know this is happening.
Yeah, well, Nap's telegraphing it quite clearly. Ray Farkey just pops the ghost. He should be out, getting some cheeky damage down. Actually, Farkey can turn this around, forces the flash. Oh my lord, we talked about the Darius power. Well, this is definitely the way to show it.
It is, because you can see that one more reset of that passive so it doesn't turn out into an ult. That's probably a dead Renekton. So now you have no teleport, no flash, no ult on the side of Nap. Ray Farkey still in fighting potential. Burning Core managed to survive the first look that Kassin's had on any of these lanes and get away with it free.
Yeah, and just the burning... I'd say it's just the burning of the ghost. You got Nap's flash out of that. Like, that's a fantastic trade, all things considering. But then again, it's kind of what you expect, right? It's a Darius. That's what you should be doing in Ray Farkey's position.
Kind of what you picked it for. Kind of what you picked it for in that sense. So, little bit of a snooze fest early on. We've had a bit of time to kind of talk about both these teams. So, we've talked a lot about gameplay, so let's talk a little bit more about these teams in the league as well. So, CGA, they lost their first game. Burning Core won their first game. Now, Burning Core did play against V3. We saw them lose just before when that was cast by Lexi and Sam, of course. And V3 were looking like one of our weaker teams. The question is, Burning Core, we have to now kind of benchmark them. We expect both of these teams to be somewhere in the low to mid table. Question is, where actually do they top out? Where does that ranking actually sit for them? It's very early days here in the LJL split. Remember, of course, it's only day 2 of games. A lot of other regions halfway through their splits already. We've barely begun, and these teams are looking to stamp their mark.
And I quite like, I'm talking about a question about where these teams are. I like that both of these teams, at least they come across as controlled, right? We're not going to see those reckless just dive-ins beyond Cass and trying something the top side. It's very slow. It is quite a passive game, but I think that it works for both of these teams, right? Aphelios, if you can get to the late game, he's an absolute monster. Jinx, Karthus, same there as well. So both these teams, it's not like, oh, you must do well in the early game and then you can like, you know, snowball the game into control. You've got late game insurance. Hell, half of Burning Core's lineup is just, if we get to the late game, good luck.
Yes. Very much so. I mean, on the other side, I mean, I do really like Lee Sin Vex singling out one target, bursting them down. Maybe if the Karthus is caught out of position, one mistake from Flawless could end this game realistically with one big fight, particularly if it leads into something like a Baron. So keep your eyes out on that as well. Kassin trying to force a mistake of his own right earlier on into the game in the spot lane, shielding his lane. But again, we're kind of sat in here for the long haul. You can see that CJ don't really want to commit to a lot of plays. And Burning Core are very happy to sit and farm up on the Karthus.
Yeah, I mean, Burning Core, you don't need to do anything. CGA, both teams scale well. But personally, I really like Burning Core's comp late game. You know, you got Karthus, and this is why Cassin, I mean, he has flash. He could look for something on Yuhi. The double flash Yuhi! He says, nah, buddy, get the hell out of here. Look at flash out of the way. Well, I don't even think Burning Core will finally lose something, but CGA had to commit so much, and now the counterattack from Burning Core.
Oh, here comes Tryndamere.
That Ghost Hybrid is not going to be able to get out of this one in one piece. Surely tries to fight back, but buddy, you can fight back, but you're simply going to die tired.
Dies tired, arms drop to the floor, dropping all of those beautiful weapons he's got. I mean, at least it starts off with a good amount of gold going up to CGA, but giving a kill up to the Tryndamere after that, pretty bad news. Ray Farkey also chunking out Nap under this top turret. I think that Nap is now going to have to be very worried of a potential dive threat in the next couple of minutes if he doesn't find a time to reset. Clean flash from Yuhi, all things said and done, but End of the day, it's a 3v2 for the starters. You have really good weapons on the side of the Aphelios too to get the extended press the attack damage with the auto attack resets from the Calibrum. But after that, you know, the play has elongated itself. It's not a very quick kick, and play goes a bit more even than they like to.
Yeah, I mean, I did like that CGA went for it, but again, I just gotta come with that flash from Yuhi. If he doesn't react that quickly, I think he just straight up dies. Because obviously he's got the clans, it's not going to get him out of that kind of situation.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if Tom Kench had ult. That would have been the one thing. I'm just trying to remember if there was level 6 from the supports at the same time. Particularly because AD carries tend to get a bit more XP as they get left in bot lane daycare as mum and dad support go out and do things useful around the map. But that's something to catch as we get later into the game, actually. Maybe we'll see the Lee Sin kick onto the Tom Kench in the hopes that they can kind of win the mind game, and Fujimoto picks up someone to get the 2-for-1 special. We talked about the KFC run. We haven't talked about the bargain bucket of the TK ults.
I mean, we've seen that in the past, as we do see.
We have.
They're posturing like they want to contest, but Yuhi's a little bit out of position. That they are now diving on to Hybrid, who's forced to flash over the wall, does get out in one piece movement, holding onto the front line as well. But CGA, they get the dragon. Will they get out scot-free? It does not look it. They will give up the life of one, but honestly, one member traded. No! Okay, never mind, he goes down. If he got out of there alive, that would have been amazing.
Would have been getting away with murder, and sadly does not get away with their life as well. Need we remind our viewers that Nemo comes into this split as one of the hottest prospects from the last season, because this was the support of the Axis lineup, which I would argue was the second best team in the LJL right at the end of last split. They ended up finishing third. It's a gauntlet format. It's not quite an exact science, but they gave a good showing to DFM in their own semi-final match, even in a 0-3 result. And Nemo now looking to find results on a different team. Hybrid is, of course, not Honey. We'll be seeing him a little later today, but this bot lane has a lot to prove, and they want to kind of retain that mantle on the side of Nemo to be one of the region's top supports. Yeah,
and well, I'm looking for the mid game for him there, right? Laning phase has been pretty passive, and yes, he's done, you know, the typical, as you said,
bit sleeper, yeah.
Daddy goes roaming around, make sure that nothing else is on fire around the house, the dragon fights, when they do start back up in, I think, about 3 minutes, the next one comes back up, will be really, really important, because they need to, for size of CGA, keep the dragons going. Because if you just let Burning Core start stacking dragons nice and early, we talk about how their comp scales very nicely. So if Burning Core are allowed to sit back, stack dragons with a really good scaling comp, a lot of red flags are coming out in my mind as, oh god, complete tangent, Ray Farkey, we need to have talk, because, why?
Is it the item again? It's the item! It's the item. So, Ray Farkey builds up a Hullbreaker. Now, obviously, Mass 1 initialized, casting the games earlier, they were talking a lot about the Hullbreaker. One of the things that people forget about Hullbreaker is that gives you a lot of increased resist when you're the only allied person on your screen. You know what Darius loves doing? 1v2ing, 1v3ing, pulling out these crazy turnaround fights, getting a percentage healing of missing HP with that Q. Hullbreaker really helps in that regard. Renekton cannot push out against the Darius, and his cannon minions become so much more tanky. I'm looking at both these solo lanes and thinking, hang on, don't Burning Core just have the ability to sit in side lanes and force CJ to come to them?
Short answer? Yes, absolutely they do.
Yes, yeah.
Like 1-3-1 them to death as well. The only problem with that is your severe lack of teleports. What is going on bot side? Fujimoto's low, but Flawless is lurking. Hybrid is on the front line and is basically nuked to 100, but not going down just yet. That Requiem, though, needs to finish it off, and they do. They will, however, lose Yuhi on the backside. A 2-for-1 trade, but both members of CGA's bot lane dropping.
They do, and yes, it is the turnaround kill. It's gold over to the Aphelios. You can see how powerful this Karthus is, where they haven't needed to do anything special. They're just clearing through their camps. They're getting themselves involved in the game just through their ultimate. They don't have to put themselves out of position, and I really like what Fujimoto did there. on the Tom Kench. Fujimoto, also, let's go talk a little bit about the history of this player too, was for so long a substitute player or an academy player for Dead Nation Focus Me. This is the first time he's really had that time to flourish on the main stage, and it starts off from his play. See, that turret goes down, but it looks like Burning Core's bot lane. They hide back in that brush, start off with that Tom Kench W, as we were talking about in the Champions League. Actually, a lot more aggressive a lane than we're not used to seeing from this Tom Kench. Gets in there, gets involved, gets some kills.
Yeah, and really good start there. I really like that. And while this is happening, Burning Core are still farming up really nicely here. You know, Yuhi's got a 20 CS lead over his opposite number. Everyone else is about even, all things considering. But still, Burning Core, I think, are in a pretty decent position. The only thing that is obviously a bit of a concern is the Dragons.
The Dragons are a bit of a concern, but and it is their Hex Rift as well. But the important thing about that is that we've talked about how the solo laners want to close the distance. They're both running ghosts. Well, when you're getting slowed by the Hex tech, that makes it a lot harder to reach that Aphelios, which we've talked about as being so important. Ray Farkey actually doesn't want to fight at all at this point. Turns out he's a 0 damage Darius. He wants to take down the turret instead, takes that one, and Hullbreaker paying off there.
Yeah, I mean, because there's no way for Nap to force Ray Farkey to take turret aggro, so you'll be fine. Ooh, a nice hook there coming through. They are targeting down, but a beautiful Tom Kench ultimate says thank you very much as Yuhi gets a little bit excited on the back of that one. Then no one from Burning Core has dropped just yet, but Hybrid is charging forwards. Burning Core does have some low health bars, but things looking good. Dice dives into the back line, gets CC'd up. He's likely going to fall the moment that Undying Rage times out. Nat says thank you very much. I got to get out of here. Hybrid, yeah, that's what happens when Ray Farkey gets on top of you. And actually, Burning Core, despite having some pretty low health bars, they're going to demolish this fight. CGA will get away with one member alive, but they only managed to take out Fujimoto.
They only managed to take that, and that's only through the flash committed from the Renekton. You would have loved to have that to kill something like the Jinx. Jinx doesn't even have to blow the cleanse. Burning Core, they're playing around their power spikes. They have their first items online, and they are so ready to brawl. Kaito doesn't get Vex resets. Going to actually go into that replay now, so we'll see it again. So Nemo tries to get on top of the Karthus, but it's not like the Lee Sin's there at the same time. It's not like the Vex is there at the same time. Tom Kench gets huge value. Flawless ends up getting to reset his own positioning in that fight as Yuhi gets the actual resets of that Jinx passive. I really enjoy how Burning Core played out this fight. It's a little over-aggressive from the side of CGA. Felt like they were a little desperate in their engage and definitely miscoordinated rather.
Yeah, it wasn't the best we've ever seen out of CGA there, but it wasn't that it was just a disaster, right? I think why it looked so bad for CGA anyway is because the Fujimoto's like, okay, you're trying to one-shot Flawless and remove him from the fight before it begins. Cool, not happening. I'm Tom Kench, get out of here. And then suddenly CGA are like, well, crap, what do we do? We've lost the target we were trying to pick before the dragon spawned. So it made that really, really difficult in that situation. And oh god, look at the gold difference in mid. Oh, poor Kaito. This isn't fun.
Oh my word. It's not fun because the Vex is a crucial part of what CGA want to do. Having that Vex being able to get up to an early Zhonya's on top of the Everfrost is, I mean, yes, you have the stopwatch. Vex is a key part of the damage to make sure that the Trindam is blowing the ult early, making sure that the casters have to be so respectful in their positioning. At this point, actually with quite a lot of extra HP built up by Flawless between the Oblivion Orb and the Leandries, I think Flawless is feeling quite safe.
Yeah, you've got to be, and you've got the stopwatch. So even if something goes disastrously wrong and Fujimoto isn't there to back you up, you can buy time, wait for the rest of your team to come through, and Burning Core are in a fantastic position here. Like, Flawless level 12.
And how often did we talk about CJ? Yeah, and how often did we talk about CJ last year and the year before that? Actually, the entire time we've been broadcasting this team about, oh, they have to fight their way back from a deficit again. Let's see if they can pull it out in the team fights. Well, yes, they have managed to do that time after time, but once again, they find themselves in a similar position. And this time they don't have, I mean, Nemo, fantastic support, but a key part of CJ's previous turnarounds was Alchemy and Nap, both finding their way into the back line. Nemo now has to take up the mantle of his predecessor on this team and say, I need to find the right targets, need to shut them down, because that's what's next on the cards for CGA.
Yeah, but then you have the question of, well, what is the right target? Well, there's Yuhi on the Jinx, but there's also Dice on the Trinimir. There's a lot of different targets. There's a
Well,
fight
this
coming
might
through.
help.
CGA have found someone, but they found Fujimoto. Of all targets, they will potentially get the Tom Kench. If Cassian can get a little bit closer, stun comes down. Nap, no! Finally dropping him on the Gale Force, but Dice has the flank. He won't be able to do much. Requiem comes through, but yeah, that's really hard because the turret is still up. Burning Core can't commit.
Oh, he's going!
And he commits in, but gets kicked. Dies. Can only get one Death Rocket. Will get nothing on the back of Yuhi here, and Burning Core, their eyes were much larger than what they were able to pull off this game.
Well, they still managed to get something from that play. Yes, it is going to be the time Kench picked off first. That's a decent pick off from CGA, finishing down the first target, using the Aphelios' utility to find an opening in this game. Starts off with the Moonlight Visual, or with the Gravitum, I like to call it the Moonlight Varus, rooting everyone in place. Catches onto some key targets, actually roots the Tahm Kench out of range to save anyone else. Tahm Kench normally wants to be stood just behind his carry, so he can buy that extra bit of distance, but not to be the case in this one. I can understand what Burning Core are thinking at this point. Hey, they've just used an awful lot of stuff. Surely we can find our way fighting back into this. But it's just the Tryndamere at this point. Actually, very Farky doesn't find a great time to come back into this. But uses, luckily, the Gale Force to very cleanly pick up that kill. Would have been 2 if that rocket had clipped onto Hybrid. Not to be the case, though. Burning Core walking away a little bit bloodied from that fight, but not too worried.
Yeah, like Burning Core, you're not looking at that fight and thinking, oh god, that was a disaster. That was, okay, we lost Fujimoto at the start, but we were able to turn it around. And you got to be pretty happy with that one. With dragons spawning up soon, I want to quickly look at items. We've got, your standard Hull Breaker and Strike Breaker on the Darius here. Dice has managed to pick up his Quick Blades for this fight as well, which I think is huge.
Oh, we saw what happened earlier games. Did you see I know on Rascal just be like, oh, I get to spin like 4 times in one fight. Good luck with that. We'll see how that works out. With the Gale Force too, Dice is so ready to run down his opposition. Not going to be running it down himself. The hook misses. 5v5. We get ourselves one of our. Oh, I love it. It's the first JRAM for us this split.
He is diving into the backline, but the Tahm Kench says no thank you as CGA is committing to dive forward, but I don't think they have the damage output here. It's actually not looking great. CGA might actually start to get white. Ray Farky's getting pretty happy about this one. It might be done.
Hybrid?
But Hybrid is untouched as well. Both of these AD carries are pretty damn happy. Burning Core, though, do have the number superiority. Hybrid going forwards. Damn, he is hungry for something. He has had all of the shurikens, but not able to get the damage down, and now 2 versus 5. I feel like you just kind of have to give this dragon up. Oh, Caston's going to steal it as well.
I mean, maybe you can have a Miracle Lisa in steal. Doesn't get there in time. But what we saw in that fight was actually Hybrid getting very scarily to a breakpoint where he could just 1v9 the enemy team. Use the right weapons with the right ultimates. Right here, though, you!
Oh, wait, no, one hit! Caston Token gets excited, gets the kill. Caston will land the Q there. Finally gets a little bit of revenge. The AD carry traded out. Requiem comes through as well. Caston will simply die to the Song of Death, and Flawless says thank you very much.
And Yuhi solo kills Hybrid. What a game from this AD carry. He manages to survive that laning phase, and it's rarely that we get to sing the praises of Yuhi on this broadcast. It's so often he's on the other end of these bad trades, but seriously, at this point, he's the one that's tagged with the Vex ultimate, but Kaito actually is the one who's overcommitting. We talked about how important this Vex is to the team comp. You can't fly into a carry when there's a Tahm Kench stood next to them. A little bit of bad judgment from Kaito. At this point, though, I was wondering if Hybrid, if he does manage to get more auto attacks, if that Q lands actually from Hybrid, I think that's probably a kill. You might even be able to snowball that into huge shuriken turnarounds after that point. Not to be the case, though. The Aphelios will have to wait for another moment to show off.
Yeah, because I think that was he had all of the shurikens stacked up as well. So, hello, Jinx. So like he would have been able to tear people apart because he had he had the Collector, he had the Gale Force. So like he had plenty of options to do the damage output. He just wasn't able to get land the skill shots with the Caliber and to turn that one around here. But I'm just noticing the farming coming out from our mid laners, hell, even our AD carries, is pretty damn good this game. Like I'm just noticing that they're basically hitting with like the ideal mark in a way.
They are pretty much just sitting in side lanes and going, yes, I love minions. Give me those towers. Because you've got these hyper pushing, because on one side you have hyper pushing solo laners that want to deal damage to the structures, and on the other side, which realizes that and doesn't really want to let them do that. That means that, of course, that they have to pick up a lot of farm in a lot of waves. You can't leave these waves unattended, even if you are looking for plays around the map. So yes, farm numbers are going to be quite high. Going to stop in those items again. Dice almost about to hit that Cyrilda's Grudge. That's going to be a very dangerous break point for Burning Core. And on a similar kind of note, you've got almost third item coming in for AD carries now as well.
Yeah, I mean, you've got basically, their Lord Doms coming out here for Yuhi is Burning Core. I want to call this a bit of a sneak. It's kind of trying to all in Yuhi, but it's just not going to work again. Fujimoto, it's paying bodyguard. You can't get past this Tom Kent. Now the turnaround might be coming through here. Burning Core could commit. They will not opt to, but like, again, this Tom Kent, I was worried about it upon seeing it in draft, but Fujimoto clearly is very on top of it right now.
And it's a cool couple of debut games for Fujimoto, because this is a player which has wanted to prove themselves for quite a long time at this point. It's very difficult actually being on a roster like DFM, even on the substitute version of it, to try and shine. Tries to get something onto Hybrid, not going to be able to land that though.
Yeah, Hybrid. If Hybrid gets caught there, that's straight up Baron. And I think Burning Core, like, the way they're positioning, honestly, I think Burning Core are just going to start up the objective anyway and tell CGA, look, you can either come into us and die, or, and that's what Yuhi's like poking around, seeing what's happening. Cassin, walking headfirst into the problem there, needs to be careful.
That's not where you want to be.
But will dive backwards there. Fujimoto holding the front line there. Requiem coming through as well. Dice has access to the back line, and this has split CGA up completely. They can't commit to the fight there. Cassin basically gets nuked. Dice was actually hungry for that one. Could not get the Gale Force execution. But that's a free Baron on the back of a really nice pick from Burning Core.
Is because now Cassin is completely out of the fight. You do have Hex Gates to get onto the map a little quicker. You're against the Leandries, Carthers, and a Jinx, though. Baron is but an afterthought in terms of killing it. It's so quick to take down. Burning Core, they look cool, they look calm, they look composed. They look like they're going to pick up another win here.
Yeah, this is a very good look for this team. That last split we talked about, they had one win under their belt. And Cassin just face-checking his elite.
And it was versus this team.
History,
it is rough, but again, we were talking about the we were kind of saying, oh wow, but Burning Core picked up the game last time. But you look at Cassin, there's face checking, but you know how quick they clear Baron. It's a risk you have to take. Give over a Baron to these pushing solo laners, kiss your base goodbye. This is going to be a very quick affair as soon as that Baron does go down. Let's see how Burning Core arrange their lanes, because it seems like this should be a one and done Baron.
Yeah, as you were saying, it's you're damned if you do check, you're damned if you don't check. So what's your options? Because we're about to watch what's going to happen now, which is Rayfarki is going to hang out in bot lane, Dice is going to go hang top lane, and Burning Core is going to 1-3-1 CGA into an early grave, because there is very little CGA can do about it. Right? You commit onto Dice, Dice ults and runs away. You commit into Rayfarki, Rayfarki kills everybody you sends at him and keeps pushing.
Yes.
And you try to commit to the mid, Fujimoto acts as the human meat shield, you fail to kill Yuhi, and then the rest of your base dies because Burning Core side lanes.
It's just Nap, Cassin, and Kaito face down against Rayfarki in the middle of Baron Canyon. You should have brought more men. Kills all of them and runs away with it. He's at 3.5 items. He has the hull break. He's level 16. Reminder that you get a full reset on your ultimate. Actually, if you get a kill with it, it doesn't even go onto an internal timer. You can play around that Darius ultimate so well at this point in the game. Kaito feels like he is just a bit of a mannequin stood under this tower. He's not even a full champion, struggling to impact this game in any way.
Yeah, and now Burning Core say, all right, that's one turret down. Yuhi, and most things get excited and run forwards. I like the little bit of discipline, because CGA does have 5 members.
But he doesn't do anything.
But you're going on to Tryndamere. Of all champions, trying to hit the Tryndamere as the full food CGA, they probably realize that they have to do something now, but the problem is they're taking a time as Requiem is going to tear them apart, and CGA realize very quickly they have no right to fight up here.
You do have defensive advantage. You can get yourself regened up. The Burning Core, they walk in, they pop a few ults, they walk away with an inhibitor taken in tow. They still have themselves a soul point as well if the game does stretch out to that point. Very happy to set up their waves around the map, though. You can see the Burning Core managed to move in sync with those minions across the map. CGA looking to take a fight before Burning Core can reset.
Yeah, Cassin's in a bit of an opposition. Dice will have to jump in over the wall. Should be fine. CGA, I feel like you have to pull the trigger now, but even then, I'm not confident
They tried. But they didn't have a Vex ult at that point. You would have had to teleport deep behind them. And CJ, they just can't find their window to find that engage. Nemo trying to find those hooks. Great traps coming out of Yuhi to stave off the engage one more time. So Burning Core, after that elongated play, they walk away with a number of structures taken, even more money in their wallets, and they're so ready to crush out a 2-0 first couple of games.
Yeah. Look at the top side of your screen here. I'm seeing, 12,000 gold difference.
That's quite a lot. That's more than a lesser amount of gold.
That is a large amount of gold indeed, and that should basically be the nail in the coffin for CGA here. Fighting from 10k gold deficit, it's near impossible. I don't think it's happened like once in pro play, if.
It would have to be. It would have to be. Wait, hang on.
God, he has a
Observer's just hovered over. That's a rapid fire cannon on. Yes, and yes, it does work on melees. You do get extended range on those autos. I mean, Dice just styling on them. Ray Farkey taking a fight on the bot side. And you're absolutely right. How do you come back from a deficit like this? You're preying on mistakes, but the mistakes would have to be so egregious. Maybe a hook like this is how it starts.
Yeah, but that is a nice zone used to buy a lot of time there. You hear saving the backline. Kaito does not get access with that ultimate, and now CGA, once again, they just don't have the combat stats to fight this. They are now so low. This could be a reset time, but Dice is staying in the backline, basically nukes Hybrid, and now Burning Core have just dominated CGA. Get the hell off our map, they're saying, as Ray Farkey, a large number of kills under his belt, and the base of CGA belongs to Burning Core.
Oh, what a breath of fresh air this is for Burning Core, one of our older organizations in the LJL. Deathless on their top and their jungle. When was the last time that happened for this team? I couldn't name it if I tried. Burning Core walk away 2-0.
And what a phenomenal showing. Burning Core, like, they've doubled the number of games they've won from last season.
That's actually one way, but less split. I mean, I think they had a little bit of a better spring on that situation, but man, I mean, CGA, they seem like they're outdrafted. They didn't play towards an early game to try and break open some of this Karthus's farming patterns, and they got punished for it.
Yeah, I mean, the heartbreaking for me is on Cassin's Lee Sim. We saw him trying to do stuff in the early game, right? Trying to get something to grab onto and get through that early game, but like, he tried to go top lane, but Ray Farkey's Darius. You can't go up there. He tried bot lane, but the one attempt down there just wasn't working out. And so CGA like, well, crap, what? Like, our early game's not bad, but then Burning Core like, cool, we scale. We'll see you in 20 minutes. Good luck. And unfortunately, CGA kind of got their shoelaces tied up, and it didn't go too well.
No, sadly not. Of course, we're going to be joined by J-Real to talk about this game a little bit more in depth. So to hear more of our thoughts on that game and wait for the next one, we'll see you after this break.
are on fire, 2-0 so far this week. And it's pretty interesting to see. And I will say, like, going into that game, you guys kind of brought it up before we threw to break, but they were just very composed. They were just very happy to sit and scale. And that's exactly what their comp needed to do.
It's a breath of fresh air. We've used the burning core being on fire thing as a much more negative connotation in the past. And for the first time in a while, I would think even in 2 years odd, burning core look like they have solid game plans. They look like they know how to play from start to finish. They're not skipping steps. They have a good idea of how they want to play out compositions. And honestly, it's great to see that. Another competitive team in the LJL is always great to see from our perspective.
Yeah, and I guess on the flip side of that, for Midnight, CGA, they picked a little bit more early game, right? They picked Lee Sin, they picked Renekton, but it felt like they kind of just hung on the whole, okay, Aphelios will do things late game without really pressing an advantage.
Yeah, that was the heartbreaking, right? Like the Renekton, I kind of get, like you want to give Nap something that you have to blind into Rayfaki. You're not giving him something squishy that can't handle itself. So Renekton, I'm fine with that. My biggest issue, and I mentioned in the cast, was just the Lee Sin, and not so for Kassan tried his best, right? You can't look at Kassan in the game and say, oh, he just spent the whole game power farming. Like he tried so hard in the early game to get things working, but Burning Core didn't let it happen. And then Burning Core just had a brilliantly scaling team comp, and then fights like this that felt even. It just wasn't their favor.
I had to say it did feel very much like a draft diff. I was seeing some of those clips on screen, of course, of what happened in the mid game, and Hybrid is very much putting out the damage. Love how he stacks up the chakrams and gets so much there. And but at the end of the day, you're playing around. Hey, maybe we can get late game dive combos onto the Karthus, but Karthus already in the game. Karthus already managed to farm up through that early game. The early lanes helped that a large amount, and it feels like Burning Core just outdrafted and outplayed.
Yeah, and I guess when we talk about outdrafted, you talked about the Darius. We got to see the Darius. Are you maybe surprised that we're not seeing some other top lane picks? Like I know Gwen has been a big showing across the Rift. Obviously, the Trinity this game got moved into the mid lane. Maybe some Camille's though as well. Do you feel like sticking to Renekton is almost a little bit detrimental at this point?
So in this draft, I don't mind it because I think Gwen is obviously quite a power pick across the world. I think that in both of these comps, you don't really want double AP on the side of Burning Core, and Renekton is meant to have almost insurmountable early game pressure. Now, actually playing against the Darius and knowing that you're playing against the Darius player too, like this guy's always picked it. Like that feels like a bit of a faux pas from the side of CGA. Something like the Gwen, I can understand why it didn't fit what they wanted for their own comp, but I mean, the Renekton obviously didn't do it either, so whatever. Maybe visit that another time.
Yeah, and I guess the theme of the day pretty much is Hole Breaker. So, Midnight, is it a Hole Breaker diff? Obviously, Burning Core built one. CJ didn't build any. Was that really their demise?
Oh, man. Part of me wants to say yes, but I feel like the Hole Breaker was simply... It meant that Nap wasn't allowed to even hold Rayfaki off, right? Like, the Darius we talked about is Rayfaki's sort of signature champion. He was a one trick at one point with that champion. So it was the idea of, okay, I'll grab the Hole Breaker, and now nothing Nap can do can stop me from split pushing. And even when I hit the team fights, the Hole Breaker's just raw stats that it brings to the table is really nice for the Darius. So suddenly you're stuck with a beefy frontliner who takes a while to kill, and if you don't kill him quick enough and he gets access to your backline gets torn apart. And then if he's not in the team fight, he's murdering Nap on the sideline. Like, you're kind of screwed no matter where Rayfaki is. He's in the team fight, he's killing you. He's in the side lane, he's also killing you.
Yeah, no, indeed. And Burning Core, they are heating up this season. I'll try and throw a few more in there. But with them scaling and their comp going the scaling route, do you feel like maybe this late game is going to be their kind of vibe? Like, do you think this is where you maybe see the future Burning Core? And is it even viable if that is the choice?
So I think that a lot of this is, I mean, I really want to praise both Fujimoto and Flawless. They are two new members to this roster. They've slotted in very, very well. I think that they played the early game very, very well too. They understood their part in that composition, like we were saying earlier. If you're going to be able to pick more scaling picks from the jungle and allow your early solo lanes to actually pick up that brunt instead, I like that kind of approach to the game. I am a little worried for the bot lane and laning phase still. They still got that 3v2. It's not as bad as we saw last season. Hopefully things are looking up for them. But yeah, I mean, having Fujimoto come in alongside Yuhi, I think that's helped prop up the lane a bit. As much as I'm sad to see Proud go from last season, he was one of my favorite players in the LJL. Burning Core, they seem to be just on like in total as an ensemble on the same page, more and more cohesive, and that's a good look for them if they are playing towards late game.
You know, with that being said, we are going to be going to another break, but when we come back, a Clash of Titans is going to be had DFM taking on Sengoku, both undefeated at this moment. Who will keep their crown?